Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, HOA neighbor stole my rented dumpster and parked it on her property to get rid of her restaurant waste. Fun fact for all of you readers out there, America is not the only place in which HOAs are horrible. I live in South Africa and had a major issue with my neighbor who just so happened to be the head of the HOA. I've had plenty of the usual small problems with her in the past, but my biggest issue is that she is a total hypocrite and does not even follow the rules she tries to set in place for everyone else. I know this story is about how she stole my dumpster, but I need to talk about what she does out of her house first. She has a garage that she uses as a restaurant, and I use that term very loosely. She puts tables in and has menus, but it is honestly one of the most disgusting places that I've ever seen. Her backyard always has a grill going, and I'm sure they are also cooking inside with no standards. This is not a place where you can do this kind of thing, and I know if anyone else even tried it, she would go after them with their HOA faster than you can blink. Heck, one neighbor was just trying to have a garage sale and she threatened to call the police and have them arrested because it went against the HOA rules to use your property for sales. Even though it is just them trying to get rid of some old stuff for little money, it did not matter. I've been wanting to do some housework for a while and finally got all the things in line to get it done. I made sure to get a permit so that even if she complained, there was nothing she could do about it. Even the stuff that did not really need a permit, like window replacement, I had put in there just so she could not throw a fit and abuse her power to stop me. I was doing a mixture of some of the work myself and some of it with professionals. One thing that I had to get was one of those giant dumpsters some of you might have seen during any kind of construction. I had to get a separate permit just for that, and the way it works is I pay a flat rate for the dumpster every week I keep it, and I pay a fee every time that I call to have it emptied. With that, I think I have all the explaining out of the way. The work actually went great the first day until I went to bed and found the next morning the dumpster was gone. It did not take long to find it because it was now on my neighbor's property and she was throwing out all of her restaurant waste into it. This was not my first encounter with her garbage because I would always find her throwing restaurant trash into my bins when hers were filled and telling her not to do it. I had another couple of days of work before it was going to need to be emptied, but because of her it was now almost full with her trash. I did not get too angry then, but you can bet I was angry now. Me? What are you doing? You stole my dumpster and started putting all of your trash in it. Neighbor, we are a community here, and things like this should be shared between everybody. Once it gets emptied, you can just walk over here to throw away your trash. Me? I'm not paying to have your garbage thrown out or anybody else's. I got a permit for that to work on my house, and that's the only thing it is going to be used for. Neighbor, speaking of which, I think you better take a look at the guidelines, because it clearly states that only professionals that are pre-approved by the HOA can work on houses here. I did not approve any of this, but I'm willing to drop it if you leave right now and forget about your selfishness. She was actually calling me selfish for not sharing a garbage dumpster. I wanted to get even with neighbor before I spoke to her. Afterwards, I wanted more than that. I wanted revenge and to wipe that smile off of her face. If she thought she could do anything she wanted because she was in charge of the HOA, I was going to show her how little power she actually had. Since I had a permit for the garbage dumpster, I did not really need any proof that she stole it aside from the physical evidence in front of me. I called the police to tell them it had been stolen by the neighbor, and they came over after a while to see that it was on her yard. They told her that if the permit was issued to me, that only I had the right to use it and was under no obligation to share. She tried to make a story where it was hers and mine must have been stolen by someone else. All of these things have coded numbers on them though, so it only took a couple of minutes for her story to fall apart and them to tell her it had to be returned to me immediately or it was theft from both me and the company that rents them. The best part was they told me I technically had the right to not let any of her garbage stay in it. While it was disgusting, I was able to dig out most of her trash and dump it right on her property for her to deal with. I was not quite done dealing with the neighbor yet, I still had one important call to make. Since she was clearly so big on rules for the neighborhood, I thought that the city should know she was running a restaurant without a license and it looked like a major health risk. They sent a health inspector to check it out if it was actually a restaurant and if it would pass standards for health and safety. He found that it was an illegally run restaurant and that even if it wasn't, he would shut it down immediately. The garage she was serving out of was never being cleaned, there were normal garage things like chemicals and mulch. She was so angry and for once was not able to use her power as the head of the HOA to her advantage. After her restaurant closed down, more people started to see the truth behind her and started to slowly push her away from the HOA until she gave up her position. The last I heard was she was going to court to deal with the illegal restaurant situation that she was not even paying taxes on. Meanwhile, I got to finish work on my house without her bothering me again, and I've got to say that it was all worth it. Both the house changes and getting back at neighbor for being a horrible woman. And wow, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that story took quite the turn and I did not expect OP to get the kind of revenge on the neighbor that she did. You know, I never understand people that clearly break the law and then still be douchebags to others. If you are running an illegal business from your home, shouldn't you be quiet about it and be nice to your neighbors so they don't report you? But then again, I guess entitled neighbors are not exactly the smartest people. The next one is titled, Don't Mess with My Parking Spot. For those who have seen me around before, I am still an over-the-road truck driver. I was under a high priority assignment that needed to be delivered by 8:30 p.m. Central. I was parked at a truck stop from late this morning to early afternoon, about 3:30 p.m. Central, as I was only about 3 hours away from my final. This idiot driver, in his infinite wisdom, decides that rather than park in a legal parking spot a little further from the building, he's gonna park in front of my rig closer to the building. I saw him park about an hour after I did and I was thinking, okay, he probably needed to shower and was gonna move. But nope, he sat there, he was still there when I got up too. So I decided I would politely ask him to move his truck so I can get out, get fuel and get gone. I was even gonna offer him my spot once I rolled out if he wanted to be in that section of the lot so bad. But nope, I was greeted with blatant hostility and when pressed further, he pulled a tire iron from his passenger seat and told me to get the F away from my truck before you'll have to crawl back to yours. Okay, game on, a-hole. I went inside to get a manager involved. Manager tried to get him to move. He told the manager, I bet that little, derogatory term for a gay man, whined like a little witch to you. I don't have to move and you cannot make me. Famous last words. I watched as the dude packed a shower bag and went inside to get a shower. However, the line for the showers was about 5 people deep and had a wait time of about 75 to 90 minutes. Rather than come back out to his truck to wait it out, he decided to wait inside the truck stop's driver's lounge on the 2nd floor. I told the manager, I need to get out of the spot I'm in. I'm under a high priority load that has a time crunch. The manager waved me down from panicking and said, I'm already taking care of it. Go to your truck and wait until it is clear for you to move. While he showed me the business card of a tow truck company and then tapped a sign on the side of the counter that read, any vehicles illegally parked are subject to tow at owner's expense. Vehicles are stored at XYZ Towing and Recovery. A quick Google search showed that this recovery place was about 30 to 45 minutes away. However, they had a tow truck there in 15 minutes because he was in the area finishing up a case of someone locking themselves out of their rig. Tow truck driver basically hooked and booked, and I got out shortly thereafter. I made my delivery on time, and now that guy won't have a truck to walk back out to, all because he could not take 30 seconds to park a little further away, but legal, or wait a minute, and could have had my spot. And yeah, ripe stars, as we all know, patience is a virtue, and it's rarely worth it to act like a douchebag. And the next one is titled, You'll Regret Being Stingy. A few years ago, I lived in a scummy apartment complex when my first kid was born. Everything was fine for the first few months, and then it just got terrible. Their gate broke, so everyone treated us to a free parking for the bus. They would not tow anyone. The ceiling started dipping, they did nothing, and our door frame broke from the pressure. Then the infestation happened. We had bees, we had rodents, and then they would send out maintenance and they would come back. The problem was our neighbors adjacent to us were awful and their trash attracted gnats. Carpenter bees swarmed my front door and infested the wooden stairs so bad you could not walk in a 5 feet radius of it or our front door, else you would be stung. We lived in an apartment building on a hill, so there were 2 bottom floors dependent upon which side you were on. I was on the absolute bottom floor where you go down from the parking area at the top of the hill, 2nd floor ground level. So, to avoid the bees, I would have to walk down the steep hill with my newborn's car seat up on my chest. We asked them to send an exterminator for months, they didn't. With the newborn and falling down the hill, we decided enough was enough and we wanted out of our lease. We found a place and said, if the carpenter bees are not removed, I will have to drive the truck onto the field and around the steep hill. I guess they thought I was playing, but they said, you do what you gotta do. I made it clear the friends that were helping me move were allergic to bees, so I was not putting them at risk. Period. On the day of the move, it was especially muddy from having rained the few days before, but it was hot and sunny. Sure enough, the bees were swarming, so I did what I said I would do. I moved the truck onto the muddy field to pack up my 1st floor apartment. Now, because of the angle of the hill, I was not able to come in from the field. I had to come from the backside, floor number 2, and drive down. So anyway, it took 15 minutes of sharp turning, but I did it. Going down, a couple tires got stuck in the mud, so I rapidly accelerated while moving the steering wheel, and now I could have decided to be more strategic, but I was pissed. I made so much of a mess that it looked like a war zone. I tore up the front side and the back going up. Their maintenance was pissed. My neighbors backed me up that they really brought it upon themselves. Wouldn't you know it, within 30 minutes they put up flyers on doors that they were doing something about the bees, but it would be the next day after I needed to move out. The aftermath, I moved out completely and left my apartment nice, so they could not take my deposit off on the apartment as no damage was personally done to the apartment. That money was a credit to be used or not because we broke our lease quickly. The landscape was a muddy disaster, so they had to pay $3,500 for it. They sent me a bill and I said I was not paying because the conditions were atrocious to move out and potentially hazardous to someone's life. In my state, that is enough to quantify dismissal here, so they sent it to the credit bureaus, but I provided all the written notice, my neighbor's video statements, and showed there was literally no other alternative. I showed that they had months to fix the problem, but chose to conveniently schedule to fix it the next day after my keys were due to be turned in. It was quickly dropped from my credit report and they were deemed legally liable for their own damages. I never paid a dime, but I seriously screwed their lawn. The next one is titled, Neighbor Got What He Deserved. My neighbor is an idiot and we've been having issues with her from the start. 6-hour relentless dog barking 4 days a week for years, yelling at me for stealing water flowing downhill, dead rabbit on the doorstep, the usual property line arguments, emptying her toxic hot tub onto our property, lying by the hedges to spy on us, parties, noise, etc. ad nauseum. Just run-of-the-mill bad neighbor stuff. Eventually, we built a giant fence and it has kept the bullcrap to a minimum. Both yards have plenty of mature trees. We have 3 maples over 150 years old and a nearly 100-year-old birch, a 12-foot cedar hedge, add that to the giant fence and daylight is at a minimum in our backyard in the summer. Idiot neighbor had 2 century-old trees and a very mature mulberry tree that hung over the fence in the only area that enjoys direct sunlight. Now, this part is entirely our fault. One spring we built a patio there with light grey stone. The mulberry tree has dark purple fruit and hers is extremely prolific. The week construction was finished was the week the berries ripened and began to drop in the slightest breeze. Sitting out there for any length of time and you would be pelted with berries, leaving purple stains like you were shot with a paintball, and sweeping a path was the only way to not step on them. If this only lasted for a few weeks, it would be tolerable, but mulberries are in season all summer. The amount of birds that feasted on the fruit and promptly deposited bright purple bird poop on everything we owned outside was unbelievable. Purple bird poop drip-dried everywhere on the patio and beyond. We started putting tarps over the entire patio to collect the bird dung-coated berries and emptying them into a bucket every time we wanted to use the patio. Remembering our neighbor's penchant for eavesdropping, I began to talk about mulberry wine. About how good my mulberry wine was and how this year's bumper crop of mulberries was going to make so much wine, and how we were going to go on vacation with all the money I was making from selling my mulberry moonshine. Visitors joined in the act, claiming they could not wait for their allotment of my fabulous mulberry wine and offering bribes to be moved up the list. I don't make mulberry wine, never have, and would not start with mulberry bird poop wine. One rainy early summer night I heard and felt a tremendous crash. I ran into the backyard. The largest limb from the mulberry tree was lying in my backyard. A chainsaw was sputtering on the other side of my giant fence. The mulberry tree was coming down at night in a rainstorm, more evidence of her idiocy. There was a bit of yelling back and forth through the fence, me about her being a dangerous moron, and her to me about having a nice vacation without having mulberry wine to sell. She continued to cut down the whole tree instead of just the limbs hanging over our property. I laughed myself into the house, not quite believing my ruse worked so well, and revenge was finally mine, but that poor tree died needlessly. Barely a month later, a viscous storm blew through our area, splitting one of her mature trees in half and damaging the other so badly it had to be removed. Now the idiot has no trees, but all mine are still standing. And the next one is titled, I think my apartment has been targeted by law enforcement and I am an ENT. What should I do? I may just be paranoid, but I think it is better to be paranoid than reckless. I think my address may have been marked for a knock and talk. Early yesterday morning my doorbell rang. I did not answer because I was in the middle of an online poker session, and then I hear loud, intimidating knocking. Again I did not answer, but I could hear 2 men conversing as they walked past my office window back to the parking lot. And by the way guys, I just tried to look up what ENT means, but I'm not exactly sure if maybe OP confuses the word for EMT, but I'm not really sure what ENT means. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments. I thought this was strange for a number of reasons, but mostly because maintenance always gives 24-hour notification and always enters my apartment with a key if I don't answer the initial doorbell ring. I went to bed shortly after this incident. While I was sleeping, they returned 2 additional times. I never woke up. My girlfriend was awake but refused to answer the door because it seemed as though the 2 men, she could hear their voices, were purposefully avoiding the view of the peephole. She looked through the window as they left and said they were dressed in plain clothes and gave her a very creepy vibe. She said one of them was wearing a utility belt, but they looked nothing like any of the maintenance men she had seen around our complex. She also said that it seemed like their clothes just did not look right on them, as if they were trying to look as unofficial as possible. This occurred again later in the afternoon. I have a clean record, but I smoke MJ regularly and I know my apartment smells like Bob Marley more often than it does not. Would I be exaggerating if I said that this just reeks, pun only partially intended, of knock and talk? I can think of no other reason for the same two plainclothes dudes to ring my doorbell 3 times the same day. I understand my rights, but I am afraid that opening my door may lead to them somehow conducting a search despite my refusal after smelling burning MJ, and even if the evidence is later deemed inadmissible, it's not like they are going to give me back my pipes and bong. What is the best course of action? Do I answer the door if they return in the morning? Am I being paranoid? Update: nobody showed up in the early morning today and I slept throughout the afternoon. I appreciate all of the comments and advice, even the trolls. In addition, I've been living in the same college town for 11 years now. I am 99% positive these dudes were not employees of any utility company. My spidey senses were going off like crazy. Anyone who stumbles their way into this thread should take the time to read the Kentucky vs. King SCOTUS case that another user in the comments linked in the top comment. It will seriously alter your perception of how much protection the 4th Amendment really provides. Sadly, not much. And by the way guys, I read a few more of OP's comments and it seemed like these strange people never returned to his apartment, thankfully. Either way, people in the comments said, I'm not a lawyer, at the sub-CT level there is Kentucky vs. King, but this is recent and I don't know how it has been applied by lower courts. Also, some states afford stronger search/seizure protections under state law. As a concerned Redditor and not a lawyer, I would be a tad worried if you were in an apartment and someone could have reported you for smelling up the place. I know you hate to hear this, but maybe store your stuff somewhere else for a week or so till this blows over. And someone else said, are you sure that these are police officers? Or could they be potential thieves checking to see what times you usually come to the door? If I were you, I would call the police department and tell them that strange men in plain clothes have been knocking on your door at weird hours, avoiding the peephole, and that you and your girlfriend are starting to feel scared. At the very least, you're making it appear that you don't intend to avoid the police, you just want to make sure you are safe. In the meantime, when you do smoke, do it in the bathroom or another room with the door shut, just in case someone does show up and needs to talk. Put towels or blankets down over door cracks to the outside of the apartment or invest in a vaporizer. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.